continue our series in Ecclesiastes, and we're in chapter 3, verses 16 and on into 4, verse 3, and so on. And in this section, we hear about injustices in the world and suffering. And it doesn't take very much to see and to learn this. In fact, all my children are under the age of 10 years old, and I can tell you that very early on, they understood fairness and justice. It didn't take much then passing out treats and one cookie being slightly bigger than the other, or maybe remembering presents for Christmas and realizing, well, why did they get that and I only got this? That never goes away for any of us. In fact, it grows and grows in impact and meaning in our lives, and this sense of what is right and what is just can completely overwhelm us as we experience injustices, as we see it and observe it. It's obvious that there is. And in fact, we know that this is something that we continue to experience because we have created systems and courts so that we can have the best as we can under the sun, justice. But the reality is that these fail us, and that's what the teacher, the preacher in Ecclesiastes is trying to tell us. In fact, it says, moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, even there was wickedness. And in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. So in the places that are supposed to be for justice and for goodness, even there, we can be, it can fall short and it can fail us. And this is a reality we can all agree on. Thankfully, it can bring much good, but also it can fail us. And he's trying to tell us not to fixate on the brokenness of this. But let's continue reading verse 17. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked. For there is a time for every matter and every work. There is a time for this and a time for that. In fact, just earlier, this idea of seasons has been laid out. Under the sun, there are seasons. However, these seasons can fall short and they're limited in their scope of what they can really do. But here in this verse, we see God will judge the righteous. That is beyond the sun. That's the eternal scope. And this can be a hard truth because we want to simply understand, well, why hasn't righteousness been done? We want to understand why suffering and bad things happen and to good people. And so all we get here is a glimpse of what is beyond the sun, but we don't get a complete answer to this. What we do get is just a little more of, I said in my heart with regard to the children of man that God is testing them, that they may see that they themselves are but beasts. And it's like, whoa, that's a little harsh. But he goes on to let us know that really the great equalizer is death, that even in that we are similar to beasts. But he's alluding to a justice and a righteousness that is greater and beyond any system, no matter how good and how much effort we put. Not that we don't fight for that, because many other parts of Scripture, God's children were confronted and rebuked by prophets from God for being unjust and unfair. But here is where you put your trust and where you lean in. See, it's not about denying it. Sometimes we can take a stance of denying that there is evil and suffering and injustice. That's not what Ecclesiastes is telling us. We can confront it and fight it and make our lives mission to confront it. We can avoid it. Let's try to do as much as possible to avoid pain and suffering and help others avoid it. There are so many different takes. We can avoid it, defy it, deny it, and we can forgive God for it because we have a sense that God has failed us and we have to forgive God for allowing certain things to happen. All of these are perspectives that in many different times in our lives, I think all of us have taken on. But here, Ecclesiastes says, you don't do any of these things. You simply go beyond the sun. And that's what Jesus teaches us. In fact, Jesus taught us the ultimate way to do this by taking on suffering and sacrifice. See, we have a God that knows us, that knows us deeply and understands that these systems and the world, there is brokenness, there is darkness, and it will never fulfill. It will let us down. But he took it upon himself on that cross that he could ultimately take us beyond the sun. And in that suffering, in that injustice, even in his death and his resurrection, he brought us glory and honor to God through his life. He was able to bring us out of that. And ultimately, we may not see it in this lifetime. And I think that is something that is very difficult for us to accept and to be okay with. But we do not fixate meaning and purpose on the systems and the things of this world. We look beyond it And we're encouraged by the fact that this is the truth right here. Verse 17, early on, it says, God will judge the righteous and the wickedness. And that is a hope that we can lean on, that we can trust, because He is a good God that is not limited by anything under the sun.